Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, 25 million Californians under a red flag warning. The impact and concern here in San Diego County as fire officials and residents brace for the worst. Live coverage ahead. Plus, with the fear of wildfires come power shutoffs, what local areas are affected and why some power companies handle it better than others. And why some say America is partly to blame for Mexico's gun problem. We examine what's being done to stop weapons crossing the border. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Thursday, October 24th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. More than 25 million people are under red flag warnings today across the state. Here at home, firefighters are heavily staffed and ready to be deployed in an instant. KPBS's Eric Anderson live now in Alpine with details on the heightened risk. Eric?
Maya, we are located just a little bit to the east of Alpine, and unlike San Diego, where you're not really feeling the effects of the wind has been blowing up here all day long. And there's a fear that that wind might intensify as this Santa Ana condition goes on into tomorrow. Earlier today, we dropped by the El Cajon fire station to find out how firefighters are preparing. Firefighters in El Cajon were making last-minute checks of all their firefighting equipment this morning. They want to make sure it's ready if called upon to battle any wildfire that could pop up during this Santa Ana event. All locally based fire crews are fully staffed and on alert.
We've added 8 extra engines throughout the county. We've added hand crews, dozers, and overhead to help support that. Just to make sure that, if we see a situation like we did in 03 and 07 where we have multiple fires burning, that we still have resources to send out.
The Cedar Fire in 2003 and the Witch Creek Fire in 2007 were two of the largest and most damaging wildfires to hit San Diego County. Both ignited and took off during a late October Santa Ana wind condition, similar to the one currently sweeping over the region.
The fuels are incredibly dry. The air is incredibly dry. The humidity today is in the single digits around the county. And so once you get that wind, we know that the brush and the grass is going to be very receptive to any kind of fire.
What firefighters are worried about during these hot, dry Santa Ana conditions is this kind of stuff. It's what they call flash fuel. It's dry grass that can catch with just a spark. Once a fire gets started in these flash fuels, it can spread quickly down this hillside into the heavier fuels. And once those heavier fuels ignite, the winds will push the flames toward those homes that we see in this Hapatula Valley. And the conditions are not going to get much better tonight.
Thursday night and Friday night, a lot of places, the winds will continue to blow just enough. And just enough means it keeps the temperature up and it keeps the humidity down. So your conditions, we call that poor humidity recovery, but your conditions can be nearly as bad even without the sun shining.
And of course, the Santa Ana conditions will continue into tomorrow, and firefighters say they'll be on high alert in case a fire does break out and they have to spring into action. Near Alpine, Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Thanks for that report, Eric. A look now at the number of people being affected by the fire and power concerns. Updated numbers show nearly 7,300 customers are currently without power due to the shutoff. They include areas of Dehesa, Alpine, Rancho Palo Verde, Harbison Canyon, Glen Oaks, Hamishaw, West Hamul, Indian Springs, Lyons Valley, and Barrett Lake. The entire Mountain Empire School District closed today due to power issues. No word on tomorrow yet. There are another 35,300 customers who have been warned they could lose power, and that is some 24 communities from Verona to Boulevard to parts of Poway to Mount Laguna, Palomar Mountain to Pine Valley, Ramona to Rancho Santa Fe, San Marcos to Warner Springs. And this is widespread. So be ready, be prepared, and do your part to help firefighters and the power companies handle the situation. If you find yourself in need of help or information, SDG&E has set up community resource centers. Water, snacks, and charging stations are also available. They're located at the Descanso Branch Library, the Whispering Pines Camp in Julian, the Pine Valley Improvement Club on Old Highway 80, and the Ramona Community Center at the library on Main Street. And we're also told the centers will stay open 1 hour after power is restored. Forecasting the weather plays a key role in determining whether to initiate power outages. So for a look at the current conditions, let's turn now to meteorologist Lauren Rainson.
Critical fire conditions will be with us as we're heading into Friday. What that means is it is still downright hot, it is windy, it is dry, very high fire danger, that exceptionally low relative humidity. Winds continue to blast 40 to 60 miles per hour. AccuWeather Local Stormex calling for up to 80-mile-per-hour winds as we're getting that strong offshore flow to persist, keeping those dew points incredibly low even as we're going into the weekend. The wind is also not letting up anytime soon. We will get other points and times where the wind will be weaker. That will try to diminish as we're heading into the weekend, but then that's going to be picking right back up again as we're approaching the second part of the weekend. We'll have your complete forecast in a few minutes.
And while we wait and worry whether a massive wildfire will strike here, those to the north of us are living it in real time right now. Mandatory evacuations are underway in many communities as structures and thousands of acres burn. The latest now from reporter Kelly Smoot.
In the face of strong Santa Ana winds, firefighters working in the skies and on the ground Thursday to battle the latest California wildfire. The Kincaid fire started at 9 p.m. local time Wednesday and spread quickly, engulfing thousands of acres in California's Sonoma County in just a few hours.
For 10,000 acres in this short period of time, that's really rapid growth on this fire.
Almost 2,000 people forced to evacuate, including the entire community of Geyserville.
We're just going through everything to make sure we have everything that we want.
The Kincaid fire began on the same day that embattled utility company Pacific Gas and Electric started another round of preemptive power outages.
These power outages are really equivalent to death by 1,000 cuts.
The company turning off power to hundreds of thousands of customers in an attempt to prevent wildfires caused by downed power lines.
It's not a decision that we take lightly. We stand by the recent public safety power shutoff we did.
Southern California Edison also cutting power to places like San Bernardino County, where approximately 400 firefighters are battling the old water fire. It started around 2 o'clock Thursday morning with the residents of at least 80 homes under mandatory evacuation orders.
I must confess, it is infuriating beyond words to live in a state as innovative and extraordinarily entrepreneurial and capable as the state of California to be living in an environment where we are seeing this kind of disruption and these kinds of blackouts. We are by no stretch of the imagination done with this season.
I'm Kelly Smoot reporting.
And the governor's displeasure over power outages is shared by many customers as well. PG&E in Northern California has been widely criticized, yet SDG&E was praised as a better example of wildfire preparedness. As part of our California Dream collaboration, KPBS's Claire Truckesser explains why.
It's bright and sunny out, but dark as night inside Live Oak Market and Liquor, a small store in the far eastern portion of San Diego County. Owner Matthew Niso scans the aisles.
This all be losing here because it's hot now. And here, all of them, milk, this, all of them is be losing.
His power was turned off by SDG&E as a precaution against wildfires. He says the outage will cost him $12,000 in lost goods.
No power.
No gas, no power, no gas. Plus the business today and yesterday, losing. And here is safe. It's nothing dangerous. Okay, why cut the power and 2 miles you have the power? I don't understand that.
That's a question being asked all over California as SDG&E and its big sister to the north, PG&E, implement what they call, quote, public safety power shutoffs. Investigators determined that a downed SDG&E power line caused the 2007 Witch Creek fire that burned nearly 250,000 acres, killed 2 people, and caused more than $1 billion in total damages. But while SDG&E is getting largely positive reviews for its efforts, PG&E is being slammed by many for mismanaging the power shutoffs. During a high fire danger period earlier in the month, PG&E shut off power to more than 700,000 customers, while SDG&E cut power to under 500.
So right about this time of day, we're starting to get this morning's forecasts and model runs.
In SDG&E's Operations Center, meteorologists demonstrate how they pinpoint vulnerable areas. Brian D'Agostino is SDG&E's Director of Fire Science and Climate Adaptation. He stands in front of 5 giant monitors showing live mountaintop cameras and yellow, blue, and red squiggles representing the utility's power lines.
A major change from 10 years ago is that we can see those days coming. We've developed tools over the years. One's called the Fire Potential Index. Another, we worked with UCLA and the United States Forest Service to develop the Santa Ana Wildfire Threat Index. But these tools analyze all of the historical data and tell us when do we have that type of day that can result in a catastrophic fire.
It's not completely fair to compare SDG&E and PG&E. San Diego's utility serves a quarter as many customers over a far smaller area, and its terrain is less challenging to manage. But SDG&E has overhauled its grid to minimize large-scale power shutoffs. Now, if one line is shut down, power can still be sent to areas through another route. D'Agostino says SDG&E is also moving power lines underground and creating smaller grids so they can turn power off in neighborhoods with the highest fire risk. All of this requires a lot of data, which SDG&E collects from 190 weather stations spread across the region.
We can analyze the height of every tree, the species of every tree, and then by cross-referencing that with our weather data, we can then indicate, is it windy in those locations?
Are they better than in the north, the utilities in the north? Yeah, probably. But does that mean that they are the gold standard? Absolutely not.
Diane Jacob is a San Diego County supervisor and a longtime critic of SDG&E. She says the utility made those changes too late, only after power lines started those catastrophic fires in 2007 that burned hundreds of homes and killed 2 people. Now, she says, they are only doing just enough to avoid being found at fault in a future fire.
They're more interested in covering their liability rear end than they are about looking out for the best interest of those who have suffered losses and the ratepayers.
Jacob says SDG&E is behind on making changes to prevent future fires.
Finish the job. Finish changing out all of the wood poles for steel poles. And with that comes widening the lines, the spacing between the lines, so that when the big wind event comes up, that there's not the arcing which starts the fires.
SDG&E says it's working to make those changes and that turning power off is always a last resort. Back at Live Oak Market and Liquor, owner Matthew Niso hopes that's the case. He doesn't want any more spoiled milk. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
And KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman contributed to that report. Mexico is looking for help from the country that supplies it with the vast majority of its guns, the U.S. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler looks at what they're doing to try and stop the flow of weapons across the border.
For years, Mexico has asked the United States to step up enforcement of guns traveling in southbound traffic to Mexico. After a deadly shootout last week in the city of Culiacan, where cartel members brandished high-powered American-made weapons, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador reiterated Mexico's request to President Trump. Now, the two countries have agreed to step up enforcement as part of an effort called Operation Frozen, which will increase southbound inspections of cars at the border looking for guns.
When I crossed the border this morning a little before 7 a.m., Border Patrol agents were checking cars for guns and other contraband. I saw them ask one driver to open his trunk and they took a look inside. Now, a few hours later, there's no one here at these booths and everyone is driving through without inspection.
The U.S. promised Mexico a crackdown on gun smuggling before. Earlier this year, new southbound booths were added to the San Ysidro port of entry to allow for enhanced inspections. On most days, however, those new booths have gone unattended. Ev Mead is a professor at the University of San Diego who studies violence and peace building in Mexico.
They really look like it was mostly a symbolic gesture, because I have to say most of the time you go through there, and the same thing with other facilities like at some of the airports or at the Cross-Border Express. The southbound inspection is irregular at best, so there's not a lot of inspection there.
While people driving across the border with guns certainly contributes to the problem, Mead says, a lot of the guns are purchased legally from gun manufacturers in the U.S. by the Mexican army. Once across the border, these guns then find their way into the hands of cartel members.
We could do a lot with the big shipments, which are a lot easier to track. And these are things that are going directly from big manufacturers in the United States, supposedly to the Mexican military. And again, a lot of it's not getting there. And that would seem like a bigger target. And I'm not sure why we haven't made better progress with that.
In a statement, Customs and Border Protection told KPBS that southbound inspections are done when resources permit and that CBP uses a pulse and surge method based on intelligence they receive. This means that outbound inspections could be unexpected. Max Rivlin-Adler, KPBS News.
Super low mortgage rates are bringing some apartment renters into the housing market. So if you're shopping for your first home, here's some tips to help make the process go smoother. Get your mortgage pre-approved. That's the first thing recommended by real estate pros in a piece on home buying tips in USA Today. That pre-approval will help you zero in on the price range for a house you can afford. And it tells sellers that you're serious and ready to buy. And even though you can act quickly with the pre-approval, be prepared for a process that can take months. You may find your dream house, but your offer may not be accepted. And brace yourself for the closing process. It can be both costly and longer than you'd like. Be prepared for all the costs that go with the closing costs, like lawyer's fees, insurance, and other expenses. You'll want to budget as much as 5% of the overall cost of the home to cover all your closing costs. For more on home buying tips, check out the full piece at usatoday.com.
As patients around the world fight breast cancer, researchers continue to make strides in the diagnosis and treatment of the terrible disease. In today's Health Minute, Mary Maloney talks to an oncologist about what the future could bring.
Each year in the United States, about 245,000 new cases of breast cancer are diagnosed in women. Another 2,200 cases affect men. The 5-year survival rate is about 90%, but more than 40,000 breast cancer patients die every year.
Then the question is, how do we increase what we're doing for the patients where our current therapies are not, yet as effective as we would like?
This is where research comes in, as healthcare professionals look to the future of diagnosing and treating breast cancer over the next several years. Oncologist Amelia Zelnick says a big focus of clinical trials has been on patients that have advanced stage breast cancer. And when new drugs are successful for them, there's hope for a trickle-down effect.
There have been a number of clinical trials ongoing looking at, can we use those same drugs along with hormone therapy for early stage disease so that more women never develop metastatic disease.
But Zelnick hopes there's another area that will get more attention and time in the future as well.
So many of our early stage breast cancer patients have an outstanding prognosis. And so much of where our focus needs to shift is not just on treatments, but on survivorship.
For today's Health Minute, I'm Mary Maloney.
High fire danger across the state and here in San Diego thanks to hot and dry weather. But how long will it be like this? Meteorologist Lauren Rainson has the answer.
Good evening. I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson as we continue to track those wildfires. We had a couple more that emerged late overnight into the early morning hours. Healdsburg Hills sometimes blasting up to 80 miles per hour. Dry, downright breezy conditions will prevail into your TGIF Friday with high pressure over the region. And because we're so dry, drought has been an issue for portions of the desert southwest. We're going to go into the overnight hours, mostly clear sky with widespread lower to the middle 60s. We'll get back to all that sunshine on your TGIF Friday, but very windy and downright hot. Our futurecast very quiet for us. You'll notice there's going to be this feature trying to make a pull in from the north. No, we're not going to be squeezing out any rain from that anytime soon, but that's going to be whipping those winds back up again by late weekend. All the rainfall and storms far out to our east. We're going to remain dry, very warm, but while the winds will try to diminish between Friday to Saturday, they will be picking back up again by Saturday and into Sunday. Coastal forecasts calling for sunshine, highs in the 80s, but we will cool to the 70s beginning Sunday. Take a look at your forecast inland with nothing but sun, very warm, pushing 90 on Friday. Your mountain forecast, sunshine, bit cooler by Sunday, even the upper 50s start out that new work and school week. Desert forecast, sunshine, flirting with 90 by Saturday, cooling to the 70s by Monday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Back to you.
This weekend, music lovers can choose between San Diego Opera's Aida and New Village Arts' Toxic Avenger, the musical. KPBS Arts reporter Beth Accomando invited Toxie and company to come into the studio to share a song, as well as some background on this cult icon.
Okay, I have to confess, Toxie and I have been booth mates at Comic-Con for years, so I'm not entirely unbiased about this Troma Entertainment superhero.
The Toxic Avenger.
Troma created the Toxic Avenger in 1984, but Toxie wasn't always a hideously deformed superhero.
Meet little Melvin.
He starts out, his real name is Melvin Ferd III, and he's kind of a geeky wannabe scientist, activist, and he gets thrown into a toxic vat of goo by the town bullies, and he turns into the Toxic Avenger.
The film spawned multiple sequels and was transformed into a stage musical in 2008.
So I was at home and flipping through my Broadway HG subscription, and I saw that they had the Toxic Avenger on there, and I said, that sounds fun and interesting. Let's check it out. So I watched it, and I fell in love with it. The music's fantastic. So it's a lot of fun rock music, and I just love the themes. It's like a classic love story, but then, the Toxic Avenger is fighting for the planet, and that's very topical right now. It's kind of something everyone's doing.
The way the show is written is for a 5-person cast, but it's got about 35 characters. And so 3 of the cast members play multiple characters. In fact, Melissa Fernandez has a duet with herself. And I think there's a joy to watching actors switch between roles instantaneously.
Audiences will have to bring their imaginations to the concert reading this weekend because there are no sets or costumes. The songs, however, will be fully performed, but we can't mention all the titles on the air.
All right, the ones I can say on air. So there's one that he sings. It's called Thank God She's Blind. The girl that he likes is blind, and he's glad she's blind because she can't see what he looks like. She has to focus on who he is inside. There's Hot Toxic Love. And then there's the one, You Tore My Heart Out, where his heart gets broken.
You tore my heart out, my human heart out. You ripped it from the bone. You left a hole there, a burning hole there. An ache I've never known. I've torn some arms off. I've torn some heads off.
That to me is one of the really appealing parts. Is I love goofy shows, and I love goofy shows that have a heart.
So let Toxie rip your heart out as Toxic Avenger the Musical gets a concert reading this Saturday and Sunday at New Village Arts in Carlsbad. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
I thought you saw my truth within. It's me against the world, and it looks like the world is gonna win.
And from the Toxic Avenger to baseball, Padres fans, the team's hired a new manager. He is Jace Tingler. Now, if you've not heard of him, you are not alone. Tingler never played in the majors and has not been a manager before. He worked in the Texas Rangers organization, mostly as a player development coordinator. He replaces Andy Green, who was fired with 2 years left on his contract. The Padres finished 70-92 this season, the franchise's 9th straight losing season. And there it goes.
It's a tough time pulling the trigger right now. There it goes. He's back.
And congratulations go out to SDSU alum Stefan Strasburg. He won Game 2 of the World Series last night against the Houston Astros. Besides this 2-run homer, Strasburg shut the Astros down over 6 strong innings. The Washington Nationals now lead the series 2-0. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.